Yes. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to your next session of Audit and Assurance. We have already completed two classes where we completed two chapters also, chapter 1 and chapter 2. Yesterday we saw chapter 2. What was chapter 2 about? Chapter 2 was about rules and regulations. We saw what are the rules and regulations which govern the auditor. Basically, we saw in various countries who is required to get audit done, right? We said generally companies are required to get audit done, but small companies are not required to. We saw who can be an auditor, who may not act as an auditor, who appoints an auditor, who removes an auditor. We saw what are the different rights of an auditor, what are his different rights. And we've also seen the international regulation where we saw International Federation of Accountants, we saw IESBA, we saw IAASB. We said IAASB, which is International Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, that IAASB body is giving us international standards on auditing, ISAs, right? Then we saw some features of ISAs and we saw how do you develop these ISAs. And then the last topic we saw, what is the role of the professional bodies? The professional bodies like ACCA body, ICAI, what is the role of these professional bodies? We had seen them in the last topic, right? Now, we're going towards chapter 3, which is corporate governance. So let me share this slide first. Heard about corporate governance? Did you hear about corporate governance earlier? Did you earlier hear about this word corporate governance? What does it mean? What does corporate governance mean? Did you hear about this word corporate governance earlier? What do you think it means? Anybody? No? If you've not heard, just tell me you've never heard. If you've never heard, tell me you've never heard. Simple. Never heard the word corporate governance? Never? Okay. What is corporate governance? It is nothing but the rules and regulations which a company runs. In order to operate a company, the various rules and regulations that a company should follow is corporate governance. Basically, it governs how should be the functioning of the company. It governs how should be the operations of the company. How should the company function? And the corporate governance makes sure that the companies run in the interests of the shareholders. Corporate governance is making sure that the company is running in the interests of shareholders and not in the selfish interests of the directors. Right? Corporate governance, what is it doing? It is making sure that the company is run in the interests of the shareholders and not in the personal interests of the directors, not in the selfish interests of the directors. The director's selfish interest is not being taken into account here. We are making sure that the company is being run in the interests of the shareholders and not in the interests of the directors, right? For example, if let's say the directors are saying that the company will not issue dividends, let's say the directors are saying that the company will not issue dividends because the profits of the company are not high this year, but they are taking high amounts of directors remuneration for themselves. They are not issuing dividends saying that the profits are not enough this year, that the profits are not high this year, but they are taking out high amounts of directors remuneration for themselves. That means what are they doing? That means directors are working in their selfish interests. Correct? That means the directors are working then in their selfish interests. They are working for themselves and not for the shareholders. So corporate governance comes into picture there, and corporate governance gives out some code, gives out some rules, which will ensure that the company is run in the interests of shareholders and not in the selfish interests of the directors. Not in the selfish interests of the directors. Okay, let's go and see. See, corporate governance is about ensuring that companies are run well in the interests of shareholders. Correct? It is about ensuring that the companies run in the interests of shareholders and not in the selfish interests of the directors. Why did the need arise for corporate governance? Again, due to high profile collapses of companies. Due to these high profile cases where the directors themselves were getting benefited out of the actions that they were doing. Next, good corporate governance is particularly important for publicly traded companies. For listed companies where public money is involved. For listed company where public money is involved, corporate governance is more important there. Maintaining satisfactory standards of corporate governance is whose responsibility? Is the responsibility of the people operating the company, basically board of directors. Making sure that the company has correct standards of corporate governance, it is the responsibility of the board of directors. It is the responsibility of the board. Board of directors is also sometimes called the board. Board of directors is also sometimes called the board. Let's see what are the key responsibilities of the board. The board, we can just give it a reading, not very important, but just to understand what does the board do, or what do board of directors do? See, the key responsibilities of the board are following. Let's see what are these responsibilities. First one, reviewing and guiding the corporate strategy, the strategy of the company, the vision and mission of the company, the objectives of the company. Basically, it is going to review and guide the corporate strategy, the strategy of the company, including vision, mission, objectives. Next, monitoring the effectiveness of the company's governance practices. The board of directors are going to monitor how effective is the governance, the company's governance practices. Is the corporate governance appropriate or not? That is also the responsibility of board of directors. Next, selecting, compensating, monitoring, and when necessary, replacing the key executives. Who are key executives? Your CEO, CFO, the chief executive officer, the chief financial officer. All of them are key executives, right? Selecting who should be the CEO, CFO, compensating, that means how much amount should he be paid, monitoring them, and when necessary, replacing them. Who? Key executives like CEO, CFO. Who is deciding this? The board of directors. It is the responsibility of the board of directors. Next, aligning key executive and board remuneration, aligning the remuneration of CEO, CFO, and the directors. Next, monitoring and managing potential conflict of interest of management, board members, and shareholders. If there is a conflict of interest between the management and the shareholders, or between the directors and the shareholders, conflict of interest means what? That means they are fighting with separate interest. The directors are keeping their interest in mind, the shareholders are keeping their interest in mind, and their interests are conflicting each other. Their interests are against each other. So then managing that conflict is also the responsibility of the board of directors. And lastly, ensuring integrity of corporate's accounting and financial reporting system. Integrity means what? Integrity means honesty. The board is ensuring that the financial reporting system, that means the accounting system and the preparation of balance sheet P&L, is having integrity, is honest. The board of directors is ensuring that the financial reporting system has integrity, accounting system has integrity. Okay, so these are some responsibilities of the board in brief as to what does the board of directors do. Now we will see composition of board of directors. Who all are involved in the board of directors? What all people are involved in the board? See, who all are involved? Very interesting and important also for your understanding. Who all are involved in the board of directors? There will be a chairman at the top. There will be a chairman, right? Chairman at the top. He will be the apex person, the top level person, the main person. That chairman is at the top level of the board of directors. That chairman is making sure that everybody meets, that meetings are being held. Those board meetings of directors, who's making sure that those board meetings are held at appropriate times, it is held regularly? The chairman. The chairman is making sure that those meetings are held. The chairman is making sure that the communication between various directors is happening smoothly. There is a proper communication channels for the directors to talk to each other. There's a proper communication which is happening between them. Right? That's chairman. How should the chairman be? He should be independent. See, right side I've given. The chairman should be how? The chairman should be independent. Now, what is the meaning of independence, or when can you call somebody independent? That we will see in further slides. Don't worry. Right now, you just understand the chairman has to be independent. What is independence? That we'll see in further slides. Okay. So the chairman has to be independent. Next. Under chairman, who's there? There's a CEO, Chief Executive Officer. Under Chief Executive Officer, there are executive directors. And see, right-hand side, there are non-executive directors. Now, who are these executive directors and who are these non-executive directors? Do you have any idea? Ever heard about what is an executive director, what's an ED, and what's an NED, non-executive director? Executive and non-executive directors. Heard? No? At least say no if you've never heard about them. At least I'll know that you guys are listening. There are 56 participants, but nobody responding. Okay, you have heard about executive, non-executive? Great. So tell me, what is an executive director? Who's an executive and who's a non-executive? Like, when do you call that director an executive director? And when do you call a director non-executive director? What's the difference between them? Anybody? Okay. Let me tell you. Who's an executive director? The director who is involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. The director who's involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. Yes, very good, Bhumika. Bhumika said it the correct answer. So executive directors are the directors who are involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. They are looking after the company's operations. For example, the example of executive directors can be finance director, sales director, marketing director. Each the companies, all the companies have separate departments, right? They will have a finance department, they will have a sales department, they will have an accounts department, they'll have a marketing department, procurement or production department. So every department can have a director. That director will be an executive director. That finance director, sales director, marketing director, those directors are executive directors. They are involved in the day-to-day operations of the company, the day-to-day functioning of the company. Above all the executive directors, there's CEO, there's Chief Executive Officer who's overlooking them. There's CEO who's overlooking all the executive directors. Then who are non-executive directors? Non-executive directors are the ones who are not involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. They only guide the company by visiting the company at regular intervals. Probably they'll come to the company only for board meetings. The non-executive directors will come to the company only for board meetings. They will come for board meetings and they'll guide the company. Now, these people are generally very experienced people. Non-executive directors are generally the people who are very experienced in that particular industry, in that particular company. For example, let's say Coke. Now, the Coca-Cola company's non-executive directors will be the people who have been experienced in the soft drinks industry for a long time. The non-executive directors will be the people who have been in that industry. For Coke, it's the soft drinks industry, right? So, the people, the directors who have been working in that industry for very long, those people will become the non-executive directors. Those people will become the non-executive directors and they'll be guiding the company. These directors are going to guide the company. They're going to see, is the company achieving their objectives or not? Is the company achieving the vision and mission or not? Basically, is it working towards the corporate strategy or not, towards the company's strategy or not? So this non-executive director is only going to guide the company, right? It is going to oversee the operations. It's not involved in day-to-day operations. It's only going to oversee the work of executive directors. And if something is going wrong or if something is going not as per the plan, that's when non-executive directors will raise a point in their discussions. Right? So these are the people who are generally of very experienced age. They'll probably be 55, 60, like that. Right? Above 50, the non-executive directors. These non-executive directors also have to be independent. These non-executive directors also have to be independent. See, on the right hand side, again, I again said they have to be independent. What do you mean by independent? That we'll see in the further slides. Don't worry. Above non-executive directors, there's a senior independent director. So among the non-executive directors, there'll be one person appointed as a senior independent director. He will be, of course, overseeing the non-executive directors. He will be overseeing the non-executive directors, the senior independent director. Clear? Any doubts in the composition? Do you have any doubts in the composition? No doubts? Remember this flowchart, and I hope you've copied down this flowchart in your books so that you understand where do executive directors stand, where do non-executive directors stand, where does the CEO stand, where does the chairman stand. Understand that flow. So I hope you've taken down this flowchart. And now we are learning about corporate governance, right? Now let's move into the chapter. Corporate governance is given in a code form. The rules and regulations, the corporate governance is given in the corporate governance code. Now that corporate governance code is split into 5 parts. The corporate governance code, the corporate governance, all the principles of corporate governance are there in corporate governance code, and that corporate governance code is split into 5 different parts. When we see these 5 parts, this chapter will be done. When we see all the 5 parts, this chapter will be done. Let's see these parts. Come. See, on this page, there are 3 parts given. On this page, there are 3 parts given. First part, board leadership and company purpose. The first part of corporate governance code is talking about board leadership and company purpose. It is basically going to talk about how should the leadership be? The board leadership, how should that be? And how should that be aligned to the company's purpose? Right? How should the board leadership be? And how should that be aligned to the company's purpose? That's what will be given in board leadership and company's purpose. See what is given there? Effective board leadership. How should the board leadership be? It should be effective. It should be an effective board leadership. They should promote long-term sustainable success. The board of directors should not concentrate on short-term success. Their concentration should be on long-term success which is sustainable. They should promote or they should focus on long-term success and not short-term success. And what kind of long-term success? Long-term sustainable success. They should promote long-term sustainable success. And the directors should lead by example. The board of directors should lead by example. What do you mean by lead by example? Let's say the directors are telling the lower level employees to come at 9 a.m. every day. The directors are telling the lower level employees, they're directing that everybody should come at 9 o'clock, 9 a.m. in the morning, not late than that. But they themselves are coming at 11. The directors are saying everybody that they should be here by 9, but they themselves are coming by 11. Are they leading by example? No. They are not. They are only not following what they are preaching. They are only not following what they are preaching. So why will the junior level employees follow? Or I can take another example. Let's say the directors themselves are very dishonest. They're not truthful. If the directors themselves are very dishonest or the directors themselves are not very truthful, they don't speak the truth, they are lying, then what will happen? If the directors are lying, if they are not being truthful, of course, the lower level employees will also lie. The lower level employees will also not speak the truth. Correct? The lower level employees will also not speak the truth then. So directors should lead by example. They should practice what they're preaching. Great. The first part is simple. The first part is not very complicated. Let's go to the second part, which is important: division of responsibilities. Division of responsibilities, important part of the corporate governance code. What does this say? Read the first bullet. Independent chairman leads the board. Right? Chairman is the leader of the board, right? Chair means chairman. Chair there means chairman. So chairman is the leader of the board. And how should the chairman be? He should be independent. This we know already. From the flowchart, we've seen that the chairman has to be independent and he is the leader of the board. He's the top person. He's the apex person. He's at the apex level. He's the leader of the board. Now, what do you mean by independence then? We're talking about independence, right? We said chairman has to be independent. We said non-executive directors have to be independent. Independent non-executive directors. What do you mean by this word independence? How do you know if a director or the chairman is independent or not? Let us see the conditions which apply. See this slide. Then we'll go back to corporate governance code. But first see, when do you consider somebody as independent and when do you consider them not independent? Independence would be deemed to be affected if a director, that means if any of these following conditions are satisfied, if any one of the conditions is also satisfied, then that director will not be considered as independent. If that director is falling in any of the below conditions, then he will not be considered as independent. He will not be independent. Let's see first one. If the director is or has been an employee of the company within the last 5 years. If that person was an employee in the company within the last 5 years or is an employee right now, he cannot be an independent director. He cannot be called as an independent director. He cannot be basically independent non-executive director, or he cannot become the chairman. If he is an employee right now or was an employee in any of the last 5 years, was the employee of this company in any of the last 5 years, then he will not be considered as independent. That director will not be considered as independent. Now, this independence is applicable to whom? Which directors are required to be independent? The non-executive directors are required to be independent. The chairman is required to be independent, but not the executive directors. Executive directors are not required to be independent. So let's say there was a finance manager. Let's say there was a finance manager in ABC Private Limited. Now that finance manager is the employee of the company, right? That finance manager is the employee of the company. Can you promote that finance manager to become an independent non-executive director? You tell me. There's a finance manager. Can you make him INED? Can you make him an independent non-executive director? That finance manager. Sonika says no. What about others? There's a finance manager. That finance manager is the employee of the company. Can you make that finance manager the independent non-executive director? Can you make him INED? You cannot. You of course cannot. Why? Because in order to be independent, that person, that director should not be the employee of the company right now or in any time within the last 5 years. But this person was a finance manager, so he was of course the employee of the company. Now you tell me, can that finance manager become the finance director? Can that finance manager can he become the finance director? He cannot become INED. Can he become a finance director? That finance manager. Okay, a lot of people are saying yes. Yes, he can. Because finance director is an executive director, right? Executive directors are not required to be independent. Remember, executive directors are not required to be independent. So a finance manager can become a finance director, no problem. No problem in that. Only non-executive directors are required to be independent. So finance manager cannot become INED, cannot become independent non-executive director, but he can become a finance director, an executive director he can become. Okay, next, see the next situation. If the director has or has had within the last 3 years a material business relationship with the company, if that director right now, if he has a business relationship, or within the last 3 years at any time, if he had a material business relationship with the company, then he cannot be an independent director. He will not be considered as independent if he has right now or in the last 3 years, if he has had business relationship with the company. That means a contract with the company of, let's say, purchase or sale. A contract with the company of purchase or sale, that will of course be a business relationship. So either directly with the company, either directly or as a partner, shareholder, director, or senior employee of a body that has such a relationship with the company. Either directly you were in the contract with the ABC Private Limited, or you were a partner in a partnership firm and that partnership firm had a business contract. Then also you will not be independent. If you were a partner in a partnership firm and that partnership firm, that body, that partnership firm had what? Had a business relationship with ABC Private Limited, then in ABC Private Limited, you will not be considered as independent director. Because your partnership firm, the firm where you were a partner, that partnership firm was what? Was having a business relationship. This is an indirect business relationship. This is indirect, where you are the partner in a partnership firm or a shareholder of a firm or an employee of the company, where that firm or company is having a business relationship with ABC Private Limited. So in ABC Private Limited, you will not be considered as independent. Your independence will be deemed to be affected. Great. So business relationship don't have. Next, if the director has received or receives remuneration from the company in addition to director's fee. A director to be independent, they should only receive director's fee, nothing more than that. A director, if that director wants to be independent, that director should only receive his fee, only receive his director's fee Nothing more than that. Don't give him more remuneration. Otherwise, he will not be considered as independent then. So read again. If he has received remuneration from the company in addition to a director's fee, participates in the company's share options. You must have heard, right? Employee stock option plan, ESOPs. So those kind of ESOPs where you are giving an option to the opposite party to purchase shares at a lower price, those employee stock option plan, these share options can also be given to directors. Can also be given to directors. But it's okay to give them to non-executive director, but not, sorry, it's okay to give them to executive directors, but not to INEDs. Because if the director participates in such a plan, in that employee stock option plan or share option plan, if the director involves themselves, if the director participates that in that plan, he will not be considered as independent then. He will not be considered as independent. So participating in the company's share option will make you lose your independence as a director. Do not participate in the company's share option or performance related pay scheme. The director's payment, the director's remuneration should not be performance related. For example, you can't put a non-executive director's remuneration as 20% of gross, 20% of profits. You cannot base upon the remuneration of the director based upon the profits of the company, based upon the performance of the company. The performance related pay scheme cannot be given. Or if he's a member of company's pension scheme, then also he is not independent. So basically, he should not receive anything in addition to director's fee. He should not participate in the company's share option. He should not have a performance related pay scheme, and he should not be the member of company's pension scheme. Then he's called as an independent person. All right. Next. If the director has close family ties with any of the company's directors or senior employees, if that person, let's say if that person's wife is working as the director in that company, then he will not be independent because he has a close family tie with any of the directors right now or senior employees. With any of the directors or senior employees, if you have a close family tie, if you're closely related to someone, then in that case, again, you will not be considered as independent. So if your wife or if your son or if your father is working as a director there or as a senior employee there, then you will not be considered as independent. Next, if the director holds cross directorships with other directors through involvement in other companies or bodies. What are cross directorship? Let's say A and B are directors in ABC Private Limited. Let's say Mr. A and Mr. B are directors in ABC Private Limited, whereas Mr. A and Mr. B are also directors in XYZ Private Limited. Both in ABC Private Limited and XYZ Private Limited, A and B are present as directors. That is called cross directorships. That is called cross directorships. If you have that, both of them will not be considered as independent. If you have cross directorship, that means you're holding the directorship with any of the other persons from the same, any of the other directors, then you will not be considered as independent. You tell me, can you be a director in more than one company at the same time? For example, can I be an independent non-executive directors in two companies at the same time? Can I be an independent non-executive directors in two companies at the same time? What do you think? Rahman says yes. Sonika says no. So most of you are saying, yes, you can be. Yes, of course you can be. Nobody is stopping you from being independent non-executive directors in more than one company. You can be an independent non-executive director in more than one company. Because anyways, you're not involved in the day-to-day operations, right? If you're an INED, if you're an INED, you're not involving yourself in the day-to-day operations. You're only guiding the company. So you can guide more than one company at the same time, right? Executive directors are preferably the directors only in one company because they are involved in day-to-day operations, right? Okay. Next, if the director represents a significant shareholder, if that director is a significant shareholder in that company, significant shareholder means what? More than 10%. More than 10% of the shareholding, if that director has, then he is not considered as independent. He will not be considered as an independent person. And last, very important point, if that director has served on the board for more than 9 years from the date of their first appointment. That means what? That means for a maximum of 9 years from the date of appointment, and a director can be independent. After 9 years, he automatically becomes not independent. For a maximum of how many? For a maximum period of time. For a maximum period of 9 years from the date of appointment, he will be considered as independent. But after that, immediately after the 9 years completion, he will no longer be considered as an independent party. So director can be independent for a maximum of 9 years from the date of their first appointment. Remember, how many years? 9. Remember that. Clear? Are all the points clear as to when can a director not be considered as independent? Or is any point not clear to you? You can tell me the point number and I can explain you that again. If any point you've not understood. Fifth point, cross directorship point. Okay, cross directorship. What is cross directorship? Two directors, two people are directors in more than one company at the same time. That means Mr. A and Mr. B, let's say there are two people. These two people are directors in ABC Private Limited also, and they are directors in XYZ Private Limited also. They are directors in ABC also, and they are directors in XYZ also, both of them, Mr. A and Mr. B. That means what? That means your Mr. A is holding cross directorship in another company also with another director. I am not saying that Mr. A cannot be the director of two companies in order to be independent. No, he can be director in more than one company. He can be an independent non-executive director in more than one company. His independence will not be affected by that. When is his independence getting affected? If another person, another director from the same company is holding directorship along with you in another company also. And another director from the same company, in the company that you were a director, and another person, and another director is also the director of another company in which you are also a director. Then that's called cross directorship, and both of you will not be considered as independent. Clear? Mehul, clear? Okay. What about rest of you? Clear everything? Independence, as I told you, remember these points, remember these cases as to where will you consider the director as not independent? Okay. Now come back. So how should the chairman be? Come back to the second part of the corporate governance code, division of responsibilities. How should your chairman be? He should be independent. That means he should not fall in the conditions that we saw. If he falls under those conditions that we saw, he will not be considered as independent. So he should be independent. The chairman should be independent and he should be the leader of the board. Next point, important. The chief executive officer and the chairman should be two separate individuals. Basically, they are trying to say that one particular person cannot be both CEO and the chairman. Listen very carefully. They are saying one individual, one person cannot be both CEO and the chairman. He should not be both the CEO and the chairman. The job of CEO and chairman should not be given in one person's hands. Why? Because that's too much of responsibility. CEO and the chairman will have a lot of responsibilities, right? If you give both of this only to one person, then that one person might not do the job very properly, because you're giving too much of responsibility in some one person's hands. That is why they're saying that chief executive officer and the chairman, they should be two separate individuals. If one person has become the CEO, don't make him the chairman. If one person has become the chairman, don't make him the CEO. CEO and the chairman should be two separate individuals. Who? CEO and your chairman. Okay, next. The board should be balanced. What do you mean by the board should be balanced? The board should be balanced means at least half of the board should be independent non-executive directors. That's what is given in the next bullet also. Listen very carefully. Very important point again. At least half of your board of directors. If let's say the total number of board of directors is 10. If the total number of directors in the board are 10, at least half of them should be independent non-executive directors. That means at least 5 of them should be independent non-executive directors if the total directors are 10. If the total number of directors are 10, at least 5 of them should be independent non-executive directors, should be independent. At least 5 of them if the total is 10. That is the meaning of board should be balanced. That at least half of the board should be independent non-executive directors. Remember, at least half of the board should be INEDs. So if the number of directors are 10, then at least 5 of them should be what? At least 5 of them should be independent non-executive directors. Right? You tell me what will happen if the total number of directors are 13. Then how many directors, at least how many directors should be independent? If the total number of directors is 13, at least how many directors should be independent? You tell me. If the total directors are 13. Bhumika says 6, Rahman says 7. What is correct? 6 or 7? When you have 13 total directors. Mehul says 6 is correct. What about others? If the total number of directors are 13, and at least half of them should be independent. 13, what is the half of 13? What is half of 13? 13 divided by 2 is how much? 6.5, right? If you have only 6 directors, it will be less than 6.5. 13 divided by 2 is how much? 13 divided by 2 is 6.5. If you have 6 directors, then it's going to be less than 6.5. It is going to be less than half. You are not going to comply with this condition. You are not going to comply with this condition. So if you have 13 total directors, at least 7 of them should be independent, because 7 is greater than 6.5. At least 7 of them should be independent if you have 13 directors, right? Now we'll take a 5 minutes break. We'll take 2 breaks today, 2 5 minutes breaks. So right now we're taking a 5 minutes break. We'll come back and discuss from third part. So take a 5 minutes break and come back. I will switch on a timer also. Yes. Are you guys back? Can we continue? All right. Let me share the screen 1 second. Yes. So we were discussing about the corporate governance code being split into 5 parts. We've discussed the 2 parts. We've discussed the first part, board legal company purpose. The second part also, division of responsibilities. One more point that you have to know about division of responsibility is that in the board of directors, it should not be the case that only one individual or only one small group of individuals is dominating the entire board. Listen very carefully. It should not be the case in the board of directors that only one single individual or a small group of individuals, like 2-3 people. It should not be the case that that one person or that 2-3 people together are dominating the entire board. It should not be that case. Everybody should be allowed to keep their point across, and everybody's say should be taken into consideration before concluding anything. It should not be the case that one person is deciding for everyone. Right? So that's how division of responsibilities point is being taken care by the corporate governance code. So remember, at least half of the board should be independent non-executive directors. And I also told you what happens when the total number of directors are odd. If the total number of directors are even, if there are 24 directors, at least 12 of them should be independent. But what happens when the number is odd? Then you will get some answer in 0.5, right? At least 6.5 should be independent, or at least 12.5 should be independent. So in that case, round it off to the next number. Because if you have 12, then it will be less than 12.5, at least 12.5, right? So you should have at least 13 directors then, if you have 25 total directors, right? Okay, so that was about division of responsibilities. Now let's go to the next one, composition, succession, and evaluation. Composition, succession, and evaluation. Basically, what are we going to discuss here? We are going to discuss how do you nominate or how do you select a director? How do you nominate or how do you select a director for the position of the directorship? So listen very carefully. Corporate governance code, we will see that in corporate governance code, there'll be 3 different committees that we'll be discussing. In the corporate governance code, there will be 3 different committees that we'll be discussing. There will be a nomination committee, an audit committee, and a remuneration committee. In this particular point, we are going to discuss nomination committee. In this part of the corporate governance code, we are going to discuss nomination committee. Now, what is a nomination committee? It's a committee made out of majority of independent non-executive directors. In this nomination committee, who should be the members? Majority of the nomination committee should be independent non-executive directors, should be INEDs. Majority of the members of this nomination committee. And what does this nomination committee do? The nomination committee is appointing the executive directors. The nomination committee is appointing the executive directors. The appointment of executive directors as to who should be the executive director, that is being decided by the nomination committee. The nomination committee is deciding who should be the executive director. Along with executive director, the key management positions also nomination committee decides. Nomination committee is also employing the key management positions along with executive directors. All right. So this nomination committee is appointing executive directors. Now, what will be this appointment based upon? The appointment should be based upon only merit. Is the person that you're appointing, is he best for this job? He should be selected only based on merit. It should not be the case that you're selecting people only because he's your friend, only because he's your colleague, only because he's your relative. No, don't select them because of your personal relationships with them. You have to select them if they are best for the job. And that is why there's a nomination committee. That is why they're not allowing the present executive directors to appoint a new executive director. They are not allowing the present executive director to appoint a new executive director. Why? Because if you allow the present executive directors to appoint a new executive director, what can they do? They will probably give that job to someone that they know. The executive directors will try to bring in another director who's their friend, who's their colleague, who's someone that they know, somebody who will take their stand whenever they are putting across a point. Correct? That is why executive directors are not being given the authority of appointing other executive directors. There's a separate nomination committee. There is a separate nomination committee. That nomination committee decides as to who should be the person who should be appointed as the executive director. And those appointments should be based upon merit, which is the best person for the job. And while appointing them, you should see their competence basically. While you're appointing a person as a director, you should see whether he's competent enough. How can one person be competent for the job? He should have necessary knowledge, skills, and experience. He should have the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience. Our knowledge, skills, and experience. That's what forms competency, right? So that person should be competent enough to take up the job of a director. He should have the knowledge, skills, and experience, right? Okay. Next point. Annual re-election of all directors. Every director is annually re-elected. That means every director is only appointed for a term of 1 year. Every director is appointed for a term of 1 year. After the end of 1 year, they can be reappointed. The same person can be reappointed, but it should not be the case that during the appointment itself, you are appointing them for 5-6 years. No, you can appoint them only for 1 year. Next year, again, there will be a re-election. There will be a re-election where you can select the same person also. You can either replace him with another director, or you can definitely select the same person also as the director. So annual re-election has to happen for all directors. For all the directors, every year, annually, there has to be a re-election. And lastly, chairman must be replaced after 9 years. Why are they giving this point? You tell me. Why are they saying chairman must be replaced after 9 years? Why are they giving this point? Why are they saying this point that the chairman must be replaced after 9 years? I'll give you a clue. Link it to something that you studied in the previous slide. Yes, very good, Vandita. He won't be independent after that. Correct? In the independence slide, we've seen, right? The last point in independence was what? That if a director is serving in the board for more than 9 years, then he's no longer independent. The last point we've seen, right? That if a person is serving in that post for more than 9 years, then he will no longer be independent. Correct? So a chairman who has been serving as a chairman for 9 years, after that he has to be replaced, because at the end of 9 years, after 9 years, he will not be independent then. After the end of 9 years, he will not be independent. He will have to be changed, be replaced by another person. He cannot remain the chairman. He cannot continue to be the chairman if He has already served for 9 years as the chairman. Clear? So that is about composition, succession, and evaluation. Let's read about nomination committee a little more. Let's go and read about nomination committee. 1 second, guys. 1 second. I think by mistake I have gone to another chapter. Yes. Let's read about nomination committee a little more. See, nomination committee. The role of the nomination committee is to decide on appointment of board of directors and senior management. This is to ensure the best person for the job is recruited. The majority of this committee should be INEDs. Majority of the nomination committee members should be independent non-executive directors. So your INEDs are only forming the nomination committee. There are no new people in a nomination committee. See the advantages? It reduces the risk of jobs for the boys. What is jobs for the boys? Jobs given to people who are your friends, who are your relatives, who are your ex-colleagues. That's called jobs for the boys. It is reducing the risk of jobs for the boys. Executive directors might appoint other directors with whom they are friends or are used to work with, but do not have the skills required. They are reducing this risk. Next, it reduces the risk of improperly affecting board decisions. Executives might appoint people to the board they know will vote in their favor of the same decision as them and can therefore influence board decisions which may not be in the best interest of the company. Correct? If you allow executive directors to appoint other executive directors, they will try to appoint someone, that executive director will try to appoint someone who is going to be in his favor all the time. Correct? So that can influence the board decisions. Clear? So nomination committee is appointing who is appointing executive directors. What about independent non-executive directors and the chairman? What about the INEDs and the chairman? Because what did I tell you? I told you that nomination committee is appointing what? Nomination committee is appointing executive directors. Nomination committee, which has majority of INEDs, that is appointing executive directors. Then who is going to appoint the non-executive directors? The INEDs, the non-executive directors and the chairman are appointed by the board as a whole. The board as a whole, the entire board of directors, whoever is in the board of directors right now, the entire board as a whole appoints an INED, decides who should be an independent non-executive director, and they should do that by using open advertising or external search consultancy. Very important. They should do that. The entire board will appoint who? The entire board will appoint INEDs or chairmen through the use of external search consultancy or open advertising. The chairmen and INEDs to be appointed by the chairmen and the INEDs are to be appointed through external search consultancy or open advertising. What is external search consultancy? Like you have these job portals, right? Naukri.com or LinkedIn. Naukri.com, LinkedIn, these job portals, these are what? These are external search consultancies. These are external search consultancies. So the board, the entire board of directors should use this consultancy, should use this external search consultancy like Naukri.com or LinkedIn in order to appoint an INED. Or if you want to, then another option to the board is use open advertising. What is open advertising? Advertising in the newspaper or advertising in the radio or advertising in the television. That's open advertising. Advertising in the radio, in the newspaper, in the television, anywhere. That's called open advertising. So either you go for external search consultancy or open advertising or both. Nobody's stopping you. You can also go for both. So the board of directors appoint INEDs and chairmen through open search consultancy or external search consultancy, and open advertising. Through external search consultancies and open advertising. External search consultancies like Naukri.com, LinkedIn. So you can write this point if you want. In your running notes, you can write this point that nomination committee is appointing executive directors. Nomination committee is appointing executive directors. The INEDs are being appointed by the board as a whole. INEDs are being appointed as by the board as a whole. INEDs are being appointed by the board as a whole. INEDs are being appointed by the board as a whole using external search consultancy or open advertising or both. Using external search consultancy or open advertising or both. Clear? Are the first three parts clear? Any doubts? We are done with the first three parts of the corporate governance code. All right. Let's go to the next fourth part then. The fourth part, as I told you, there are 5 parts in corporate governance code. There are 5 parts. 3 parts we've seen. Now we are going to the fourth part, audit, risk, and internal control. We're going to learn about audit, risk, and internal control. What about audit, risk, and internal control? Listen, first we'll discuss about risk and internal controls. Now, every business faces business risks, right? Every business faces various kinds of business risks. Can you give me an example of any risk that businesses faces? Every business will face business risks. Can you give me an example of any business risk that a business might be facing? Any example of a risk? Any example of a risk that a business might be facing? A competition from the competitor, from another company who's a competitor, that's a risk, right? That's a business risk. Technology advancement, technology changing every day and being advanced is also again a risk. Probably your technology will become very outdated. You losing the customers is again a risk. So all of these are business risks, right? Yes, Shashank, risk of uncertainty. So all of these are what? All of these are business risks. Who should manage them? The board. The board of directors should make sure that they are managing all of these risks. And along with managing this risk, they're also responsible for overseeing the internal controls. They're also responsible for what? They're responsible for overseeing internal controls. What are actually internal controls? That we'll see in systems and controls chapter. In your chapter number, I think 6 or 7. There we'll see about internal controls. You don't worry about that right now. So that's about risk and internal control. That the board should be able to identify and manage the business risks. They should first identify those risks and manage those risks. And they should oversee the internal controls. The third point here is audit. The third part here is audit. Now, what about audit? First point is the board of directors should ensure the independence of the internal audit and external audit functions. As we told, how should the external auditor be? He should be independent, right? We took that example that if my wife is working in ABC Private Limited, Can I be the external auditor of ABC Private Limited? No, because I will not be independent. I cannot be the auditor of ABC Private Limited if my wife is a director there. Why? Because I will not be independent in that case. Correct? So the board of directors should ensure that the external auditor is independent. The board of directors should make sure that the external auditor is independent. Similarly, internal auditor should also be independent in his working. Internal audit, again, we'll see that in future chapters. So that he should also be independent. So the board of directors is ensuring that the that internal audit and external audit functions, the IA and EA, internal audit and external audit functions, are independent. Along with this, an audit committee must be established. Like there was a nomination committee. Now we are learning about another committee, audit committee. What should be established? An audit committee must be established. In this audit committee, there should be minimum of 3 independent non-executive directors. Remember, in an audit committee, a minimum of how many? 3. There should be minimum 3 independent non-executive directors forming a part of this audit committee which is being established. There, what was the condition in nomination committee? In nomination committee, majority of them should be INEDs. Here the condition is minimum 3 persons in audit committee should be independent non-executive directors, should be INEDs. Okay. So an audit committee must be established, which will contain minimum of 3 independent non-executive directors. At least one of them, out of these 3 independent non-executive directors, at least one of them should be having recent and relevant experience. They should have expertise relating to audit and accounting. It's an audit committee, right? It is what? It's an audit committee. So in the audit committee, at least one person should have what? At least one person should have the expertise relating to auditing and accounting. Correct? At least one person in the audit committee should have the relevant experience or the expertise in auditing and accounting. So that's what they're saying. At least one member should have the recent and relevant experience. And the chairman should not be a member of audit committee. The chairman cannot become the member of a audit committee. Chairman can never be a member. Right? So can a chairman be the member of audit committee? No. Chairman should not be the member of audit committee. Right? If you want, you can note down these things. In your own words, you can write these things. So an audit committee must be established. That audit committee must have minimum 3 independent non-executive directors, 3 INEDs. In case of small companies, 2 are also okay. In case of small companies, 2 are also okay. In case of what? In case of small companies. But generally, in case of big companies, there should be a minimum of 3 independent non-executive directors. At least one of them should have recent and relevant financial expertise. The chairman cannot be the member of an audit committee. The chairman can never be the member of the audit committee. Okay. What does this audit committee do? We are talking about audit committee establishment, but what does this audit committee do? So in order to understand that, let's go to the next slide. See, what does the audit committee do? See the composition first. The composition of audit committee is what? Minimum 3 independent non-executive directors, and at least one of the members should have recent and relevant experience or financial expertise or expertise relating to our auditing and accounting. Correct? At least one of them should have recent and relevant experience in accounting or auditing or financial expertise. That's the composition. Let's see what is the objective of the audit committee. What are the objectives of the audit committee? What is the audit committee doing? What's its objectives? See, public confidence in the credibility and objectivity of published financial information. They are making sure that the financial information which is being published, basically the financial statements, are credible, are reliable. Credible means reliable. Next, assisting directors in meeting their responsibility in respect of financial reporting. With respect to financial reporting, the directors have a responsibility of preparation of financial statements, right? The directors have a responsibility of preparation of financial statements. The audit committee can assist them in that. And lastly, liaison with external auditors. What do you mean by liaison? Any idea? What do you mean by the word liaison? Liaison means communication. Remember from today. Liaison means what? Liaison means communication. So audit committee is also making sure that the communication with the external auditors is also happening correctly. Liaison is nothing but communication. These are some objectives of the audit committee. Let's see the functions. What does audit committee do? See the functions. Monitoring integrity of the financial statements. It is monitoring what? It is monitoring integrity of the financial statements. Integrity, as I told you, was what? Is honesty. Whether the financial statements are true or not. It is monitoring that. Next, it is reviewing internal controls. It is reviewing internal controls. It is monitoring and reviewing the internal audit function. The internal audit function, audit committees monitoring and reviewing that. Next, it is making recommendation for reappointment, removal, and remuneration of external auditor. It is making recommendations, reappointment, removal, and remuneration of the external auditor. Who should be appointed as an external auditor, whether he should be removed, what should be his remuneration, everything. Audit committee is making recommendations relating to that. That's audit committee. Next, reviewing and monitoring the external auditor's independence and objectivity. It is also reviewing whether the external auditor is independent or not. The external auditor, as I told you, has to be independent, right? It's an independent external party. So audit committee is reviewing whether that external party is independent or not. Next, developing and implementing policy on the engagement of the external auditor to supply non-audit services. Audit committee will develop the policy, will develop the terms and conditions for the external auditor to give any non-audit services. For the external auditor to give any non-audit services, to give some other services other than audit. Last, reviewing arrangements for confidential reporting by employees and investigation of possible improprieties, which is whistleblowing. Heard about whistleblowing? Have you guys heard about whistleblowing? One second, guys. Yes, you must have heard about whistleblowing. What is whistleblowing? Let's say I'm an employee of the company. I got to know that somebody is doing fraud. If I am an employee of the company and I get to know that, let's say, a senior manager is doing a fraud, then what should I be doing? The company should create an environment in such a way that I should be able to complain. I should be able to file a complaint against the senior manager anonymously without my identity being revealed, right? Without my identity being revealed, without letting people know as to who complained, I should be able to complain against that senior manager who's doing that fraud. I should be able to disclose the information without being without basically revealing my identity, without people knowing who I am. That is whistleblowing. So audit committee is also reviewing the arrangements. It is reviewing how is the environment of the company. Is there proper arrangements for whistleblowing? Are there proper arrangements for whistleblowing or not? That's audit committee, right? So come back. So we've seen what does an audit committee do. We've said audit committee must be with minimum 3 independent non-executive directors. At least one of them should have financial expertise. The chairman can never become the member of audit committee. Next, the last part of your corporate governance code is remuneration. The fifth part of your corporate governance code is remuneration. What about remuneration? This is discussing as to how much amount is being paid to the directors as remuneration. How much amount is being paid to the directors as remuneration. Now, who should decide that? Again, there's a committee, remuneration committee. Like there was nomination committee, audit committee. Now there is remuneration committee. Again, in remuneration committee, who should be the members? There should be minimum 3 independent non-executive directors. In remuneration committee, there should be minimum 3 independent non-executive directors. What will this remuneration committee do? This remuneration committee is going to decide the remuneration of executive directors. This remuneration committee is going to decide the remuneration of executive directors. It is going to decide what is going to be the remuneration of executive directors. But this remuneration that they are going to decide, it should be based upon a policy. It should not be just a random number. The remuneration that remuneration committee is deciding, it should be based on a policy of the company, and that policy should be formal and transparent. That policy which your policy for setting remuneration, that policy which the remuneration committee is using in order to calculate the remuneration, that policy should be formal and it should be transparent. That means anybody can any director can have the access to that remuneration policy. It is transparent and it is formal. Okay. Also, remuneration that you're setting should promote long-term sustainable success. The remuneration that is being set should promote long-term sustainable success. It should not concentrate on short-term success. The remuneration being paid should concentrate on long-term sustainable success. And no director should be involved in setting his own pay. If you allow the director to set his own pay, he will of course set it at a very high level, right? So do not allow the directors do not allow them to set their own pay. They should not be involved in setting up their own pay, right? So no director should be involved in setting his own pay. Read the first 4 bullets. Remuneration set by remuneration committee. Who is setting the remuneration? Who is deciding the remuneration for executive directors? Remuneration committee. Again, remuneration committee should also have minimum of 3 independent non-executive directors. How should the remuneration be? It should promote long-term sustainable success. It should promote the long-term sustainable success. Next, policy for setting remuneration should be formal and transparent. There should be a formal policy. There should be a transparent policy for setting up remuneration. Next, no director should be involved in setting his own pay. You should not allow the directors to set their own pay. Of course, right? You should not allow the director to decide their own pay. If they are deciding their own pay, they will decide their own pay to be very high. They will take a higher amount from the company. Next, board chairman. Can the chairman be the member of remuneration committee? Board chairman, the chairman can become the member of remuneration committee, RC's remuneration committee, if he was independent on appointment. If that chairman was independent at the time of appointment, then that chairman can become the member of remuneration committee. No, audit committee, he cannot become the member. The chairman cannot become the member of an audit committee, but remuneration committee, the chairman can be the member. Next, workforce pay should be considered when setting executive pay. Very important point. What are they saying? Workforce pay should be considered when setting up the executive pay. I'll give you an example, a very simple example, so that you understand that point. Listen very carefully, because important point. What is that point saying? Listen, for example, let's say during COVID, ABC Private Limited decides that it wants to cut down the salary of the employees by 30%. Because the business was not doing that great. The business was affected by Corona, affected by COVID. So during 2020, ABC Private Limited decided that they want to reduce the salary of their employees by 30%. The salary of the employees, the salary of the workforce is reduced by 30%. Whereas at the end of the year, when directors' remuneration was being decided, the directors' remuneration is decided, let's say, to increase by 20% from last year. They decided that the director's remuneration is going to increase by 20% from when compared to the last year. Then what are they doing? At one hand, they are saying that they don't have, that they don't have much income, so they are reducing the salary of employees. On the other hand, they are increasing the remuneration of the directors. Is that fair? Is that fair? Do you think that company is doing a fair job? No, they're not doing a fair job. If you're reducing the salaries of the employees, if you're reducing the salaries of the workforce, how can you increase the remuneration of your directors? How can you increase the remuneration paid to directors? So that is why it is given that consider the workforce pay. What did you do to them? If you have reduced their salaries, then don't increase the director's remuneration. Don't increase the remuneration paid to the directors, right? So workforce pay should be considered when setting the executive's pay. When setting executive director's pay, consider what did you do with the workforce pay. If you have reduced the workforce pay, then do not increase the director's remuneration. Simple as that. And lastly, so executive directors' remuneration committee is deciding. What about non-executive directors? The non-executive directors' remuneration is again set by the board as a whole according to their time commitment and responsibilities. According to how much time that have they given in the year and what were their responsibilities. According to the time commitment, the amount of time that they've given to the company during the year, seeing that you will decide what will be the amount of remuneration for non-executive directors, and this will be decided by the board as a whole. Okay. Clear? Any doubts in remuneration? No doubts? Okay. Let us go quickly to one question and see a question. One second, let me open that. One second, guys. Yes. Look on your screens. This is a question from the exam kit. So there's an exam kit. I hope everybody knows that. Like you have a study text. Study text is like a textbook. Study text is like a textbook. There's another document called an exam kit where previous exam questions kind of a question are given. Similar questions to the questions that occurred in previous years. Similar questions. I'm not saying the exact question. Similar to the past exam questions. Some questions are given in the exam kit. Now let's read this question. So this is an objective test case question. So there is going to be a case study, and below that there are going to be 5 objective type questions. So let's read. The following scenario relates to questions 21 to 25. Let's see what have they given. Cameron Company has recently become a listed company. Cameron Company is required to comply with the corporate governance principles in order to maintain its listed status. Since they have now become a listed company, they have to comply with the corporate governance code. Because as I told you, mostly public companies are required to comply with corporate governance code. Public companies means what? Where public's money is involved. So if you're a listed company, public money will be involved and you have to follow corporate governance code in your company. Read further. The finance director, Lindsay Levis, has undertaken a review of compliance with corporate governance regulations. So the finance director has undertaken a review. Let's see what is given. Next, board composition. The Cameron Company's board of directors comprises of 6 members. How many people are there in board of director? In the board, there are 6 members. So how many should be independent non-executive directors? If there are total 6 members in the board of directors, how many should be INEDs? At least half of them. That means at least 3. At least 3 of them should be independent non-executive directors. You see how many INEDs are given to you? You tell me. In this company, actually, how many INEDs are there? In this company, actually, how many independent non-executive directors are there? Yes, there are only 2, Jules Jardine and Taylor Tahir. There are only 2 INEDs, Jules Jardine and Taylor Tahir. And among them also, Jules Jardine have been serving in the company for 10 years. Among those also, Jules Jardine has been serving for more than 9 years. If he's serving for more than 9 years, he's no longer independent, right? Jules Jardine is no longer independent because he's been serving for more than 9 years now. Okay. Let's see what is given about the rest of the people. So Cameron Company's board of directors comprises 6 members. See name, Ola Osborne, role, chief executive and chair. Is this okay? Is this okay as per corporate governance code? Length of service 5 years. Is this okay or do you see any problem? There is a problem, right? And what is the problem? As we discussed, that chairman and CEO should not be held by the same person. These 2 positions, the chairman and the CEO, should not be held by the same person. Here, Ola Osborne is both the chairman and the CEO. Ola Osborne is both the chairman and the CEO. So this is not as per the corporate governance code then. They should be 2 separate individuals. Yes, very good. Next, Lindsay Levis is a finance director for 10 years. Finance director is an executive director. Hayden Huck is a sales director, again an executive director. Carrie Khan, an HR director, again a executive director. Jules Jardine and Taylor Tahir are INEDs. Okay. Next, directors were last subject to re-election 3 years ago. But as per corporate governance code, what should they do? They should revise this to every year. Annually, they should be subject to re-election. Every year, all of the directors should be set to re-election. Next, Ola Osborne has been the chief executive of Cameron Company for 5 years and has recently been appointed the board chair. So that Ola Osborne, he has been the CEO of the company for 5 years and has recently been appointed the chairman. Ola Osborne is considering appointing one of her close friends as a non-executive director. See what is happening? The chairman and the chief executive, Ola Osborne, is considering that one of her close friends should be appointed as a non-executive director. Is that correct? No, that's not correct. You should not appoint someone only because she's your friend. You should not appoint someone as the director, as an INED, only because that person is a friend, right? How should an INED be selected? An INED should be appointed by the board as a whole by the use of external search consultancy and open advertising. Correct? By using, the entire board is going to decide as to who's going to be the INED. The entire board is going to decide, and they are going to use external search consultancy and open advertising. Okay. Next, directors' remuneration. Something is given about directors' remuneration. See, executive directors are paid a fixed salary, which increases annually in line with inflation. There is no performance-related pay or bonus awarded to executive directors, as the company does not want to provide incentive for financial results to be manipulated. So what are they doing? To the executive directors, they're paying a fixed salary. They're not paying any performance-related payment or bonus to the executive directors also. Performance-related pay, like certain percentage of profits will be paid to you as a remuneration. That you cannot do to independent directors. But executive directors, you can pay performance-related pay because that is going to motivate them to do more harder. If you give them a performance-related pay, higher the profits, higher will be the remuneration that they're receiving. Then there will be motivation in the minds of them to work hard. Right now, what is happening? Right now, they are being paid a fixed salary. So even if you don't work hard, you're going to get the same salary. Even if you work hard, you're going to get the same salary. Okay, that's director's remuneration. Next, audit committee. Just now we've studied. Read. The company does not have an audit committee as the board of directors did not consider it necessary due to the experience of Lindsay Levis. Lindsay Levis is the finance director. They are aware that an audit committee is now required and have proposed that one is established comprising the two independent non-executive directors, Lindsay Levis and Ola Osborne. Okay. Let's see the questions. First one. First one. Select whether the following matters in respect of board composition represent a corporate governance strength or does it represent a corporate governance deficiency. Deficiency means what? Problem. Right? Strength, like strength is an advantage. Deficiency is like a problem. First one. Ola Osborne is the chair and chief executive. S or D? S or D? Sonika, Bhumika, and Rahman says D, deficiency. What about others? Ola Osborne is both the chairman and the CEO. If you're both chairman and the CEO, are you following corporate governance code? No. This is a deficiency in corporate governance code. This is a problem in corporate governance code, or this is the area where you're not following corporate governance code. So the first one is deficiency. It's D. D for deficiency. Next. All of the current non-executive directors are independent. Strength or deficiency? Only this statement, by the way. You should concentrate only this on this statement and answer. All of the current non-executive directors are independent. Will that be a strength or a deficiency? S or D? S or D? So some people say S, some people say D. Now the people who are saying D, I think what are you doing? You are trying to analyze this particular line. You are saying whether this line is true or false. I'm not asking you to compare this line with the information given above and say whether it is true or false. All of the current NEDs are independent. That's a false statement. That's a false statement. But they are not asking you to identify a true or false statement. They are asking you whether this matter which is given, whether that is strength or a deficiency. If the matter is that all the current NEDs are independent, that's a strength for the company, right? That's a strength for the company. They are not asking you for true or false answers. Correct? So second point, all of the current NEDs are independent. NEDs being independent is a strength, right? It's a good thing. So that is a strength. Next, Ola Osborne is considering appointing her friend as a non-executive director. S or D? Yes, this is a D. This is definitely a deficiency. This is a problem because you should not appoint somebody only because they are your friend or they are because you're ex-colleagues. Okay, that's a deficiency. Last one. Next. Which of the following can be a member of audit committee once it is established? Lindsay Lewis and Ola Osborne. Which of the following can be a member of audit committee? Should I go up and show you who was Lindsay Lewis and who was Ola Osborne? Lindsay Lewis was your finance director, right? Lindsay Lewis was your finance director. Ola Osborne was your CEO and chairman. Ola Osborne is the CEO and chairman. Lindsay Lewis is the finance director. You definitely know that chairman can never be the member of audit committee. You definitely know that chairman can never be the member of audit committee. What about finance director? Finance director is an executive director. Finance director, Lindsay Lewis is a finance director, is an executive director. He cannot be the member of audit committee. Finance director also cannot be the member of audit committee. Only INEDs. Only independent non-executive directors can be the members of audit committee. So the answer is D, neither one nor two. The answer is D, D for Delhi, neither one nor two. Both of them cannot be the member of audit committee because one is a chairman, the other is a finance director. Only INEDs can be the members of audit committee. Okay, next. Match the two issues given to the most appropriate response. So two issues are given. You have to match them with one response each. First one, the board is not balanced. There are 6 directors right now, and there are 2 independent non-executive directors. The board is not balanced. What should be the response? A, B, C, D, or E? Yes, one is what? One is definitely option D. D for Delhi. Why D? They have to appoint 2 more INEDs, right? What will happen if they appoint one more INED? If they appoint one more INED, the total will become 7 and INEDs will become 3. The total number of directors will become 7 and INEDs will become 3 if I appoint one more INED. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. So if I'm appointing one more INED, it does not comply with corporate governance principles because at least half of them should be INEDs. That is why appoint 2 more INEDs. So when you appoint 2 more INEDs, the total of directors will become 8. The total number of directors will become 8, and the number of INEDs will become 4. The number of INEDs will become 4. So that will comply. So issue number 1, answer is D. D for Delhi. Next, second issue. Executive directors are paid a fixed salary, which increases annually in line with inflation. And why is this the issue? This is the issue because they are not being then promoted to work hard. They're not being encouraged to work hard if they are being given a fixed salary. What should be the response? A, B, C, or E? Yes, very good, guys. The second issue, the response for second issue is C. C for Calcutta. Why C? Because C is talking about share options. If you give share options, if you give the option of purchasing a share to the directors at a lower price, then if the company performs well, the share value is going to increase, right? If the directors perform well, the company is going to perform well, and the share value is going to increase. So there is motivation for executive directors to work more. But you pay fixed salary. If you pay fixed salary, there will be no motivation. So fixed salary, instead of having a fixed salary, introduce share options to align the remuneration of executive directors with long-term success, right? If the profits of the company are increasing, the share prices will also increase. So that's the motivation for the executive directors to work more hard, right? Okay. Which of the following would not ensure Cameron companies compliant with corporate governance principle? So they are giving you 5 options. Out of the 5 options, they are asking which of the following would not ensure that Cameron companies compliant with corporate governance principle. Jules Jardin. Who was Jules Jardin? The INED who has completed 10 years in the company. Jules Jardin is the INED who has completed 10 years in the company. Ola Osborne is the right now chairman and CEO. Which one? Okay, let me go back and show you. Yes, come here. Can Jules Jardin become the chairman? Can you make Jules Jardin the chairman? Why? Why no? Why Jules Jardin cannot become the chairman? You tell me. Why do you think Jules Jardin cannot become the chairman? Chairman has to be independent at the time of appointment, right? Chairman has to be independent at the time of appointment. This person, Jules Jardin, he has already completed 10 years in the company. That means Jules Jardin is not independent. If Jules Jardin is not independent, he cannot become the chairman, right? Because he will not be independent then. But chairman has to be what? The chairman has to be independent. That is why Jules Jardin cannot become the chairman of the company. Right? So see, again come back. So which of the following would not ensure Cameron companies compliant with corporate governance principle? If you replace Ola Osborne with Jules Jardin, then that will ensure that you're not complying with corporate governance principle. So the correct answer is option A. The correct answer is option A, because that is not ensuring that Cameron companies compliant with corporate governance principles. Option A. Okay. Let's go to the last question then of this particular. Yes. Select whether the following statement in relation to director's remuneration are true or false. You just have to select true or false. First one. Remuneration of directors should be set by nomination committee. True, false. True or false? False. The first statement is false. Why? Because remuneration should be set by remuneration committee, not by nomination committee. They are saying nomination committee. It should not be set by nomination committee. It should be set by remuneration committee. Next, workforce remuneration should be taken into consideration when setting the remuneration of executive directors. What is this? True or false? This is true. This is true. This point we've seen that you have to see the workforce remuneration. If you have reduced the salaries of your employees during COVID, do not increase the director's remuneration, right? So this is true. The last one is a generic point. Try to answer true or false. The company should be able to withhold the bonuses and share awards from directors whose performance is not acceptable. The company should be able to withhold. That means they should be able to not give the bonuses and the share awards if they think that the director's performance is not acceptable. This is true. This is a very generic point. This is a very general point. Of course, it's true that you should be able to withhold the bonuses. Okay. So we have completed chapter number 3, corporate governance. Corporate governance is done. What we'll do is we'll take a small break now, and then we'll start chapter 4. We'll start the next chapter. We have to do chapter 4 also. So we will start chapter 4 after the break. So you take a break. I am also switching on the timer, and we'll come back after the break and continue. Right? So in ethical principles, integrity means what? Integrity means honest and straightforward. You have to be honest and you have to be straightforward. That means you should be truthful. You should be truthful. So as a practitioner, as an auditor, you should always be straightforward and honest in all professional and business relationships. In all professional and business relationships, you're going to be honest and straightforward. That's integrity. That's the meaning of integrity. Okay. Next, objectivity. We've just seen the word objectivity and independence, right? We've just seen the word objectivity and independence. Let's read what do you mean by objectivity. See, objectivity. Members should not allow biasness, conflict of interest, or in any undue influence of others to override their professional or business judgments. The members or the practitioners or the auditors, they should not allow any biasness. They should not allow any undue influence of others to override their judgments, to affect their judgments. That is objectivity or independence. So integrity, being straightforward and honest. Objectivity, not allowing any biasness or undue influence to affect your decisions. Integrity, objectivity. Next, professional competence and due care. We've seen this word a lot of times now, right? Competency. We've seen this word a lot of times now, the word competency. What do you mean by competent or competency? You have to be having necessary knowledge, skills, and experience, right? So it's one of the ethical principles also that you as a member, you as an auditor should be professionally competent and you should work with due care. You should be careful while working. Professional competence and due care. That means you should be careful while working. You should have due care while working. So see, professional competence and due care. A professional accountant
must attain and maintain professional knowledge and skills. What can you add? You cannot knowledge, skills, and experience at the level required to ensure that a client receives a competent and professional service. Right? You should see whether you are competent enough for that client or not. And how is competency determined? By your knowledge, skills, and experience. And knowledge and skills, you just don't attain it. You should maintain it also. Like you attain the degree. After that, should you stop your knowledge? No, you should maintain that knowledge. You should still be updated with the latest going ons, because as I told you yesterday also, there'll be a lot of amendments every year. So as a practitioner, you need to be aware about such amendments which keep happening in various laws. Right? So professional competence and due care. So integrity, straightforward and honest. Objectivity, do not allow any biasness or undue influence in your decisions. Professional competence and due care, have the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience. Next, confidentiality. Next one is confidentiality. What do you mean by confidentiality? You must have heard this word a lot of times, right? Keep this confidential. When somebody says you keep this confidential, what do they mean to say you? They are saying you that they are telling you that information, but you have to keep that a secret. You have to keep it a confidential thing. You don't have to reveal it to others. You don't have to reveal it to people. That's the meaning of confidentiality, right? That's the meaning of being confidential. Correct? So, the same logic applied to the members or to the auditors. While you're doing the audit of a company, let's say I'm the auditor of, let's say, Coca-Cola company. If I'm the auditor of Coca-Cola company, I will get to know a lot of insiders information about Coca-Cola company, right? I will get to know a lot of inside information about Coca-Cola company as to what is their raw material, what is their production process, how much time are they taking in order to produce, how are they packing their soft drinks, what is the cost of their production, what is the profit margin that they're adding, how are they determining the selling price. I would know all of this information as an auditor. Since I am the auditor of Coca-Cola company, I will be knowing all of this information about Coca-Cola company. How should I keep this information? This information that I came to know about Coca-Cola company should be remaining confidential. I should keep it confidential. I should make sure that I'm not disclosing this information to people. Correct? Because why? Because this is crucial information, right? This information about the cost of production, about profit margin, about the way it is producing, all of this information is very crucial information. If it gets in the hands of the competitors, what's going to happen? Coca-Cola company might lose out. Correct? So it's my responsibility, it's the auditor's responsibility to make sure that the information that you are getting while auditing, make sure that that information is being kept confidential. Make sure that that information you're keeping confidential. Right? But there are some exceptions to this. There are some exceptions to this point of confidentiality. And what are those exceptions? Let's see them. Let me tell you. Generally, you are required to be confidential. Generally, you are required to not give the information about your client to people, to any of the outside parties, to any of the third parties. But in two situations, you can. What are those two situations? When there's a legal right or a duty, or when there's a professional right or a duty. When there's a legal right or a duty, you can disclose, or when there's a professional right or a duty, you can disclose. So legal right or a duty, that means coming out of law. Professional right or a duty, coming out of the ACCA rules. If it's a legal right or a duty, or if it's a professional right or a duty, then in that case, they can disclose the information that they've gotten from the client. What do you mean by that? In order to understand this better, let me come to next slide. We will go back to the previous slide, but first see this slide, confidentiality. See, before disclosing, consider three things. Before disclosing any information about the client to third parties, to external parties, consider three things. Whether harm could be caused by the disclosure, whether this disclosure that you're going to make, whether any harm will be caused because of this disclosure. Next, whether all relevant information is known. Do you know the entire information or do you know just the half information? Because half information is always dangerous, right? So whether all information is known and whether the information is to be communicated to the appropriate recipients. Are you communicating to the correct recipients? See all of these things. And then when can you disclose the information? You can disclose this information, as I told you, when there's a legal right or a duty, or there's a professional right or a duty. You can disclose this information when there's a legal right or a duty, or when there's a professional right or a duty. Legal right or a duty is given on your left side. What can be the example of legal right or a duty? What can be the example of a legal right or a duty? The legal right or a duty means out of law you're required to disclose. There's a law present. Because of law you'll have to disclose this information. For example, listen carefully. Let's say you're the auditor of ABC Private Limited. Let's say you're the auditor again of ABC Private Limited. And let's say ABC Private Limited is evading taxes. While doing the audit, while performing the audit, you came to know that ABC Private Limited is doing what? ABC Private Limited is evading taxes. It is not paying taxes. If you get to know while you're doing your audit that ABC Private Limited is evading taxes, what should be your legal right or a duty? Your legal duty is to tell about this fact to the tax authorities. Yes, this information you got it during your audit. So you have to be confidential about it. But there's an exception. Since this is an information about tax evasion, since the company is evading taxes, evasion of tax means what? The company is not paying enough taxes. ABC Private Limited is trying to evade taxes. That means it is not paying the entire taxes. Then in that case, it is your legal duty to go inform the tax authorities. To go and inform sorry, to go and inform the tax authorities about this, that this particular company is evading taxes, right? So you'll go to the tax authorities and you'll have to disclose this information about your client. So that is why that's an exception to confidentiality, when there's a legal right or a duty. And another example of legal right or a duty is when you are giving any evidence in the court proceedings. If you're giving any evidence in the court proceedings, then in that case, again, in that court, if you're providing some information about the client as an evidence, it will be considered as a legal right or a duty. When you're providing any evidence in the court about your client, let's say the court has called upon the auditor to get some information about the client, then can you say, no, the information is confidential, I can't tell you? No, that's an exception to confidentiality. You will have to give information about the client to the courts in the legal proceedings. Okay, so read required by law. Read the left hand side. See the cases. Production of documents or other provision of evidence in the course of legal proceedings. Right? That's a legal right or a duty. When you're producing documents or any other evidence in the course of legal proceedings in the court, when the legal proceedings are going on. And next point, to the appropriate public authorities of infringement of the law identified. Like to the tax authorities, when income tax law was being infringed. Infringed means what? Not being followed. Infringement of law means what? Non-compliance of law. So to the tax authorities, when income tax law is not being followed. Right? These are the cases where there's an exception to confidentiality. You can go and give the information about the client to third parties. This is a legal right or a duty. Next, come to the right hand side, professional right or a duty. Professional right or a duty to disclose. Let's see, when is there a professional right or a duty? As I told you, professional right or a duty will come into picture when it is required by the professional body, like the ACCA body. To see the examples, to comply with the quality review of ACCA or another professional body. To comply with what? To comply with the quality review of ACCA. So the ACCA body, listen very carefully, the ACCA body does quality reviews on firms. The ACCA body does quality reviews on the audit firms to see whether those audit firms are working appropriately and maintaining the necessary quality standards or not. Right? Whether these audit firms, the multiple audit firms which are there in the world, whether these audit firms are maintaining their quality of work or not, to check that, ACCA body does quality reviews. So if your firm is being done a quality review of, if your firm is selected by the ACCA body and if they are doing the quality review of your firm, they will get the information about the client, right? If they are seeing your work, if they're going to review your audit work, they're going to get to know information about the client. So again, this is an exception to confidentiality. This is an exception to confidentiality where you're complying with the quality review of ACCA body. Next, to respond to an inquiry or investigation by ACCA body. When you're responding to an inquiry or an investigation which has been started by ACCA body, again, you can give the information about the client. So quality reviews by ACCA body, inquiry or investigation by ACCA body. Next, to protect the professional interests of the professional accountant in legal proceedings. In the legal proceedings in the court of law, if you want to protect the interest of the professional accountants, if you want to protect the interests of your profession, then again, you can disclose. And lastly, to comply with any technical standards or ethical requirements. To comply with technical standards or ethical requirements, you can disclose the information. So these are the exceptions to confidentiality: legal right or a duty or professional right or a duty. Apart from this, if you want to disclose it to a third party, that disclosure should be permitted by law and it should be authorized by the client. That specific disclosure should be allowed by the law, and that disclosure, you should take the permission of the client before disclosing. It should be authorized by the client. You should take a permission of the client before disclosing. That's there in the middle. Disclosure permitted by law and authorized by the client. Clear? Is confidentiality clear? Come back and read confidentiality from here now. See, members should respect the confidentiality of information acquired as a result of their professional and business relationships and should not disclose any such information to third parties without proper and specific authority or unless there is a legal or professional right or a duty. right? If there's a legal right or a duty or a professional right or a duty, then you can disclose this information to third parties. Those are exceptions. Great. And then the last ethical principle, professional behavior. What do you mean by professional behavior? Behave professionally. When can you say that you're behaving professionally? When you're complying with all the laws and regulations. When you're complying with all the laws and regulations, you're said to be behaving professionally. So see, professional behavior. Members or practitioners should comply with relevant laws and regulations. They should comply with all the laws and regulations and should avoid any action that discredits their profession. They should avoid any action which brings a bad name to their profession. They should avoid any action which brings a bad name to their profession. Right? Whatever laws and regulations apply to them, they should comply with them. Like auditing standards apply to them. So they should comply with all the auditing standards. Companies Act 2013 might have rules for auditors. So they should comply with Companies Act 2013. So all the laws and regulations which apply to them, they should comply with that. And they should avoid doing any action which brings a bad name to their profession. They should avoid doing any action which will bring a bad name to their profession, which will discredit their profession. That's professional behavior. All right. So how many points have we seen as ethical principles? 5. In order to remember these 5, you can make an acronym IP COP. In order to remember all of these 5, you can make an acronym IP COP, IP COP, COP, IP COP, where I is integrity, P is professional competence and due care, C is confidentiality, O is objectivity, P is professional behavior. So IP COP. IP COP. Remember IP COP. Remember this acronym. You can write down this in your notes because this will not be there in your textbooks. These are my additions. In order to remember the ethical principles, remember IP COP, IP COP. So I for integrity, P for professional competence and due care, C for confidentiality, O for objectivity, P for professional behavior. Clear? Doubts in ethical principles? Do you have any doubts in ethical principles? No doubts? Okay, so we've finished ethical principles and we have to still see threats and safeguards, but we still only have like 7-8 minutes left. Of course, I cannot finish that topic in 7-8 minutes. So I'll start that topic tomorrow. So again, today I'm leaving a little early, about 8 minutes early. So enjoy the time and we will start the next topic from tomorrow, which is threats and safeguards. And we will finish this chapter and also start the next chapter. And we'll do the next chapter also in tomorrow's class. All right. So see you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks a lot for attending. And I will see you in your next class. Have a good day ahead. And I hope you are revising things. I hope you're studying things. We are completing the chapters very quickly. So please study them. Please revise them. Whatever doubts you have from them, please come back and you can ask them to me in the class whenever, whatever you have a doubt in. All right. So bye. Thank you. Thanks a lot.